Before we start with our block of the month, I wanted to talk about a few of my favorite notions. Let's start off with rulers. Rulers are very important, kind of a bit of a game changer sometimes when you are cutting very precise. These right here are called add a quarter. I have a large and a small. What's important about these are they have the quarter seam inch with a lip. So when you put it up next to your block or your material, it automatically leaves that lip, does not allow you to cut off that seam. Very important for a sturdy product. In addition to the rulers, I wanted to point out that Legit Kit has their own paper template. This, not a paper template, but it's for our paper templates of our finished blocks. This is the exact size of all of their finished blocks, and it works wonderfully. It even has the seams pre-built in, so you can see, make sure you have your seams where you need them to be. In addition to that, we have what's called a flip and fold. This is something you will use on your paper to help you flip over, getting that crisp line perfect, so you'll sew right perfectly on the line, or if you need to trim, this helps you fold back that paper so you can see your material underneath. Very, very cool product. It's actually, as you can tell, kind of moves around flimsy, but it's very sturdy. So don't let that fool you. It is perfect and does exactly what it needs to do. In addition to when you're folding your fabric, what's really important is also a mini glow or a glow box. This is a caterpillar, and on top of it I have a self-healing cutting mat, and it works fantastic. You can kind of see it when we get started. It'll show you where the material is, where it needs to be. You can see through it, so you can make sure you get your material the correct size when you're using your add a quarter. So another thing I want to point out you'll need is paper scissors. In addition to material scissors, and I have material scissors, but I also often use my rotary cutter the most. You can cross these over. You want to make sure that everybody knows what's your paper scissors, what's your material scissors, because we don't want to get those crossed. Now, when we're talking about paper and sewing and material, that brings up the subject no one wants to talk about. We're going to talk about it. But here's the thing. We're pretty perfect, so we hardly use these, right? Everybody uses them. It's just our secret. Here's my favorite seam ripper. This one right here has a big end and a small end. I often always use a small end, but let me tell you what this guy does. The very end is like an eraser. So when you have your thread in your seams and you've got to go through there with the little tweezers, which are also important, and pull those out to make sure you get them on, this guy, you can run him down your fabric and he will pull out all of your threads. It just grabs them, pulls them right out. It's fantastic. Now, if we're using these guys, there's something else that comes along with it, is ripped foundation paper piecing. No one likes ripped paper. So a lot of people, they'll use the washi tape, which is a paper foundation. The foundation of it is paper, so you can iron over this. Put it on your material. You can put it on your paper. You can put it behind your paper, so it's not covering up your seams. But I'm going to tell you what I find the best. Yeah, invisible tape. But there's a trick to this invisible tape. You want to make sure to get the matte invisible tape. When you're going to iron over this, for some reason it says transparent or invisible tape, you need the matte. The matte tape will not stick to your iron. You can iron over the top of it and it does not affect it. If you get the clear or you get the shiny, listen, you're going to be getting that stuff off your iron, and that's as much fun as visiting with Jack. No one wants to do that. So an additional product you're going to need is glue stick. I use a glue stick, as you can see when we get started on my very first fabric. I just put a little bit of glue on there. It holds my fabric down, until I start building on with the seams that hold it together. This is the invisible washable glue stick. I want to point out it is purple. It comes off clear. It also comes off on your fabric. It might look a little bit purple, but then it turns white. I have never had a problem with this. Now, when we are talking about all of our seams together and the foundation paper piecing together and all of those seams joining to get these fantastic looking, look at these fantastic pieces. Do you know how much material and fabric that is? Whew. Yeah, it's bulky, but we have some hidden secrets we can use. This right here is an acorn pin. It's called an easy press. It is fantastic. I'll show you when we get started. You're going to press it along your seams and you will iron that seam. It just comes out, makes that seam a whole lot more flat, and it helps it get smaller and smaller. So eventually that bulk is going to kind of wear down. I use that on the back of the seam, and on the front of the paper material, I will use flattener. I use it not over the entire section, but in the bulky seam, I spray a little bit of it, hit it with my iron. I use the mini iron, hit it with my iron, and I can get it pretty flattened. And that's really important. You want to get your seams laying down so we don't have as much bulk in our pattern. Another important piece that I use are clips. A lot of people like needles, and they are great. When I do use them, I will use the glass head thin. They are fantastic. I just sew right over them, not a problem. I also use a lot of these small binding clips. They are fantastic to hold the material down. They're fantastic to measure your seams, and I'll show you that as we get started on the block of the month. So I'm super excited about you guys joining me for the block of the month, and it is about time to get started. So I have my paper scissors, and that's what I'm going to use to start cutting out our pattern. Now remember, these don't have to be cut out precise. I suggest you don't cut them out precise because these gray area here is part of our pattern, but that is our seam. So we want to make sure we leave extra seam allowance. So when I am cutting out the pattern, I'm going to cut right in between those two pieces and cut around. And I'm going to leave extra around my required 1/4 inch seam. And again, this is A2, so we're going to have an A2 pile right here. Once you start working with the blocks and cutting out fabric, we can go back and cut some of the excess off to be a little less to work with. Now, while you're cutting a block and you have all this extra trash that we're not going to use, if you happen to throw away a piece or you happen to lose it, maybe cut through it, just remember, don't panic. Legit Kits offers not only the fabric replacement. If we say, I accidentally cut like all of this on this too much, I don't have enough remaining, they will send you what we need. We can just email Legit Kits, tell them I need Peacock AD for the BOM block 1, and you will get that. Now, the same thing on your pattern. If I were to cut this or throw it away, I have accidentally thrown one away. You can either scan your documents, scan all these pattern pieces in before you start cutting your pieces up, and it's okay to do so. This is your product. Now, you cannot sell it, you cannot any of that, but you utilize this for you as you deem necessary. So you can either scan it and then go print it off, or you can print the papers and keep that for you. It is just as easy to contact them and get them to send you one. So I'm going to go through here and cut all of these up and file them into my 2 categories. So far, block A2 is winning. This is a little extra. Just going to cut off some of the extra on here. It bothers me to have too much extra paper, too much extra fabric. There's a couple ways when you are cutting out your fabric. You can do not cut piece by piece and lay it to the pattern. I will go over that with you if you would like. There's A1. It's just trying to trick me up now, isn't it? But for consistency, we are going to do these all color by color, one color at a time. Okay, now that we have all of our blocks separated into our piles, we have block A1 and A2. So now we're going to do some fun things, cutting up our fabric. I know it's going to be okay. We're going to start off with our cut guides. As I had mentioned earlier, we are going to start off with asparagus AC, okay? Now, a while ago, we also starched our fabric, so it's pre-starched and ready for us to begin. We're going to find our blocks by utilizing the cut guide and the blocks listed out here. So since we're going to cut all of this at one go through all the patterns, we'll show that to you. I'm going to take my asparagus and lay it on my light board. All right, so our first block is going to be A1 and A2. This is how we know this is our cut guide for AC asparagus, which is what we have here. And our first block is A1B2, and you'll see in those blocks it'll show AC. And that is the first cut we're going to make. Now remember, we have our glue stick as well as our needles. We will need to have the needles to kind of hold it together. As well as these are small pieces, so I have a small add a quarter ruler. All right, so let's get cutting. I'm going to set this to the side. We're going to take our piece, our fabric piece. Oh, I do want to point out on this cut guide, it is not sized to the exact size of what we have. As you can tell, this is a whole big piece, but you can tell what size you're working with on your pattern by utilizing the block size A1B, which is the one we're going to do. Number 1, so you can find your number 1 block over here. Sometimes that's important. If you can start with your bigger block, your bigger cut of fabric, that's a great indication that you're going to cut in the right place and you're going to have plenty. But as you can tell, there's also all this extra. So I do like to go around the edges and stay consistent with my cut. So if there's a one great big long one, I know it's going to fit. So I stay very consistent and around the edges, never start in the middle. You can kind of see as we get going. So I'm going to take this, our first piece, and I'm going to put it on the edge. Now I like to take the parts that are longest and try and take up as little as possible overall. You don't want to take it up in the middle, but I would probably take it right here. And if you can see, I've given myself that 1/4 cut, okay? That quarter of a cut for my seam allowance. And I'm just going to take a little needle, poke it in AC, because remember this is number 2 AC. You don't have to use your quarter of an inch, quarter of a seam right here if you don't want. But I do like to take and fold, and this is where we also have our tool from Legit, which, you know, I may have lost. Just kidding. It's right here on my sewing machine where it belongs. So we could take that, fold our seam. I do a little press on it, kind of fold it in, get that end. Now you can be exact, and you can take your quarter of an inch ruler and you can cut exact. But honestly, I use it but as a guide, only to keep me straight. I don't use it as a quarter of an inch cut here because I cut my seams larger, because you want to be able to kind of finesse it out a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and cut this one. You can just kind of do a roundabout exact. Go ahead and cut. And I'm not going to continue to cut straight because I don't need all that. I'm going to go ahead and cut it this way. What does that matter is if I have a long piece, maybe I need a long run, that leaves that length for my fabric. So we have number 2 cut and ready on the back. Now the reason we're going to leave this on here is because we are not cutting in order. We're cutting in fabric color specific. If we were cutting in order, we could do the cut piece 1 and then move to piece 2, piece 3, and sew them as we go. However, we're going to do this one color specific. So I'm going to leave my needle in number 2 with asparagus so I know that is the right color. We're just going to set it aside and we'll move to our next block. AC is number 3 on this one, and it's A1D. Don't forget to take your pattern piece next to your cut guide, and we're going to go ahead and indicate that we're going to cut number 3. Since I have a little divot, and we can look and see where this one's actually over here on the long side. We could go along the long area, which, you know, if you're going to cut it exactly, then my 1 should be up here in this corner. So remember, no right or wrong block. So guess what? I just flipped my fabric to be just like the cut guide. Not necessary, but if you want to stay consistent and you want to do it that way, you sure can. It does not hurt anything. So we're going to take 3, which is in the corner. It does have the opposite corner. Naturally, I would want to cut over here or even right here. That's a fantastic cut right there. But I'm going to go ahead and do it as the cut guide says. Put it right up against so we can see our 1/4 inch seam, maybe a little bit more because you always want a little bit of room to move around. Again, this is number 3, so I'm going to put a needle in it to secure fabric piece number 3 is in its spot. Go ahead and use either your add a 1/4 ruler, you can use your legit flip chart. This thing is really much more thin. It does fantastic. This is where you want to make sure you do not cut extra than your seam allowance. So give yourself at least the 1/4 inch. So if you want, you could turn it over, put your 1/4 inch ruler, and go a little bit larger. It's not going to hurt anything. So it's on our edge over this way, so I would just take my piece here and cut it out, and there we have it. It's going to stay affixed to the back. I'll set him aside. Now I'll demonstrate A1D. Our first steps, as you recall, we're going to go over here, find A1D. It's going to be 3. That's right, we haven't cut it yet. Marking these off are really helpful to determine if you've lost a piece, threw away a piece, may or may not have done that before, but it indicates maybe you've already cut it, you've misplaced it. In a larger kit, when you have all these pieces, sometimes misplacing a piece, if you're not completely organized, it does happen. Or even when you are organized. No judgment there. So I'm going to take AC3. Number 2, it has it up here in this far corner. This is the only piece that I am going to follow the cut guide in because, I don't know guys, it might kill me in the long run. I'm going to leave a good 1/4 inch all the way around this. I'm going to go ahead and cut this section. I'm going to fold this AC right on that seam to make sure. Guess what? I need more than a 1/4 inch though because I don't want to recut fabric. We're going to go ahead and get our needle, place it in AC so it does not move. We have our last piece. Look guys, our completely last piece of AC for block A1. And this one's going to be G2. So we're going to go ahead and mark it off. I need to cover that back up, don't I? cover up the power on and off button. That should be helpful to us all. So we're going to go with, as I was saying, A1G, which is cut piece 4, which is going to have it kind of, it's just at an angle here. Okay, so we're going to take our A1G2. We're going to lay it however we want to kind of cut it out. I like to take the long seam, put it along the straight seam right here, and go ahead and cut that out. Trying to cut off this little nib there. Again, if you want, sometimes I wait to put my needle in because it will offset your ruler if you lay it on the top of it, but I will do better and put that on for you guys. So we're going ahead and creasing our seam allowance where we're going to sew, and now we're adding our seam allowance, but again, I add about double what you need, really do. Then remember, we have this quite large here. So if you see right here, I have it. Just gonna cut that down. And there's our next piece. Now this completes block A1, and we will move to A2 with AC, asparagus. Okay, moving back to block A2. We're going to start with block A2. I'm going to go ahead and pull out my pieces A2E and A2H. Oh, I must have passed it. A2H, where are you? Right there. Put my little binder clip back on here so we do not lose them. So I have 2 pieces, even though the block shows we're going to be cutting 3. A2E has 2 cuts for asparagus, and that'll be section 4, piece 4, and piece 6. 4 and 6, so kind of a little bit smaller. Piece 7 will be next. Remember, marking off our guide. Okay, let's start with E2, 4. Let's see where you are. AC right here. Now remember, I'm going to take my long edge. Maybe it's just a lazy habit. I don't know. I'm going to put it along here so I do not have to make that long straight cut. Additionally, you'll see the lines here. Pull this down a little bit. The line is the sewing line. That's the line we are going to sew along. So we want to make sure that we have 1/4 of an inch all the way around this block. But we also want to go to the end of this line right here, as you can see. The sewing, either direction you go all the way to the line. So be sure and cut your fabric to that specific. Remember, it can be, should be, not can be. What I've done is, because this line goes further, we give our 1/4 of an inch. It takes that line that we are going to sew on in account. Okay, so this is actually where I'm going to cut because I have quite a bit extra seam there, seam allowance. Now opening back up, and go ahead and cut this side. Now remember, this is where we want to put our pin in if you haven't done so already, and this is A4. Keeping him in place. Now we'll move to C, which is on here as well. Make sure you can see that a little better. A2, E6. Go ahead and mark him off. He's a little bitty baby piece, guys. Look how much fabric we have going on. You guys, we can actually, you don't have to, but I know a lot of people like to save fabric. If you don't, you're okay. Look, we have one more piece. And look how much fabric we have left. Look how much fabric. We have one more section, one more cut. But if you want to try and save on your fabric, like I said, I know a lot of people do. Be sure and when you hold the block, you've got your 2 on here and he may overlap. So if you need to, just take and clip him down so he does not get in the way. We don't want to cut our fantastic piece. We're cutting on this end, the little AC, and as you can tell, he's at an angle, so I'm going to turn this to make it at the same angle. Look, he's got 1/4 of an inch all the way around, a minimum. I could move him around on this. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take and I'm going to cut that whole piece because that is now his piece. That's his color. So there we have it. We have one block that has 2 of our pieces already on here. I've got a few little strings. Let me kind of cut those off because they're going to get on my nerves. All right. Our last piece is A2H. A2H, it's 7. You can tell it's pretty small in general. So I've already marked it off our cut guide. Where it goes to A2H6. Let me point this out real fast. When we are looking at these cut guides, this is your block A2H, A2H. Pull that cut guide down. You can see it a little bit. Right here we have A2H block 6. Block 6, okay? On here is the 7th piece on this cut guide. That is how we find the 7th. So don't let it trick you. Again, block A2H, section 6 on here. But in the line of the cutting order, it's 7. So this is our last block. Move that up so you can see. I'm so sorry. Right here. Last piece. So this indicates how it's lined up on the cut guide. This is fully your block and your pieces. A2H6. He's also a small little piece on here, right? Let's find a corner for him somewhere. Now I'm going to flip this over because I kind of like that corner. But here's the thing. This is a long piece. I'm going to go ahead and cut him over here, I think. I'm going to put him in this corner. I'm going to take my add a quarter and I'm just going to give him a little bit of cut right here. Pretty big piece for him. He doesn't mind. Put him back in here where his quarters are showing. Seam allowance. And put a pin in A6. I'm going to go ahead and file him. Now let me point out we are now done with avocado. And this is how much fabric we have left. So we're going to have more of this color, more than likely, throughout the BOM process. So you can keep this and file it in our handy dandy folder that we created. Remember our 3D binder? It's totally not necessary. This is such a smaller project, but I do like to keep all of it together. And so what I'll do is I will probably put drop it in alphabetical order into a laminating sheet packet. Then that way I can have it for the future. I am going to also leave my label on here. So as I've been cutting my block, I also wanted to share with you, I've cut all of my blocks except for, or all of my pieces except for 5. So I have DK and DN remaining. What I wanted to show you though is this is all my leftover fabric. Some of these pieces are fairly large, and as we start sewing and I start cutting, look how big that piece is. I want to show you how large I actually cut my seam allowance. I'm not sticking with the 1/4 of an inch, usually quite a bit larger. This is very helpful. There are some pieces, however, that's a little bit smaller. These probably came with smaller blocks. This is probably more of a scrap than a fragment, or it's more of a fragment than it is a scrap. So it's a smaller piece. And that, remember, as you've seen, is labeled on our cut guide, fragment, scrap. So these are a lot of the pieces left. Remember, that was our first asparagus. And I just wanted to share that with you. Remember, I did leave the tags on here in case we cannot determine what color we were working with. We can go and verify that. So let's get to cutting a few more pieces. I'm going to move to my DK and DN, my last 2 pieces to cut. And on this one I have 2 pieces. This one I have 3. Let's see what we got. A1E and A1D. Here's my A1D. Let's start with it since it's the first piece. And this is going to be DK color. It's going to be block 2, or section piece 2 on our block. Yeah, kind of a lazy cutter. Remember, I'm putting my pins in that's going to hold that fabric to block 2. This block is now complete, this piece to make our block. So as you can see, I have a pin in every one of our numbers. I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to cut this little piece right here, DK. I'm again just going to put the furthest end right here on an edge, a straight edge, so I don't have to cut it again. You're going to make sure this folds over. He's meeting. I can come down a little bit. Guess what though? I really don't have to because this is all left over. I have 1 piece remaining. So he's all the way down here. This is my seam allowance, but you know what I'm going to go ahead and do? I'm just going to cut this piece away. I'm going to go ahead and cut him out. He is clearly covered, okay? I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in him to let us know that that color, that fragment is D2. And here we have another complete block piece. I'm always going to call it a block, apparently. This is our leftover fabric from DK. I'm going to move it to the back. And now my next one is going to be DN, and I have 3 pieces to work on for that one. 1 AH, which is going to be my very first one. Block him off. I'm going to start in the corner. Just because, again, this is going to be easy to get my quarter seam allowance right here. I'm going to tuck that fabric in so I don't cut it. I'm just going to get me a, could just go, you know, straight across here and not make it a funky cut, but go ahead and do it that way. Cut back and leave our fabric funky looking. Put a needle in there. Looks like we have another block complete. Now I'm going to flip this over because, again, I want to run that straight edge as straight as I can get up this corner of this block. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a little bit more of a seam allowance than what I'm showing. Just to make sure, you know, when we're doing our cutting, we don't have to recut, or that's kind of the worst. I guess there's worse things, but you know. All right, now AD does not have a needle through it because it is the first piece and already glued on, followed by 2 and 3. Woohoo! Moving right along, we have our last piece, DN. And that is a cut number 2. Now, as you can tell, some of these number 1s I didn't go ahead and glue on my first piece. I just went ahead and put them on like the rest. Let's go ahead and this little needle guy here is going to fall off. Let me tuck him back in. What happens if your needle falls off and your fabric comes loose, or you don't remember what fabric piece you're working with? Remember, in your cut guide, we will go over that. You have, it's way back here, but let me go ahead and show it to you. We have our fragment pieces, our colors that we had put in our sheet protectors. So we can go ahead and match these up as we need, okay? There's the gradients too. So the gradients are very helpful when you are just a few color swatches off. All right, back to our last little block. We're going to go ahead and move him down here because look at that. I already have a straight line here. And I have a straight line here. Yeah, I got a big 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, but it's fine. I like it. I do here too because I didn't cut that fabric or cut that paper off. But we'll get to him. All right, looks like I just completed my last piece to build our block A1 and A2. And I hope you have also done the same. This completes marking off our last sheet as well. I keep these sheets too. I don't know why. It's really not necessary. But I do want to keep them until after my project's over. So I'm going to file this in the block 1 folder for future reference. My additional fabric pieces that I have, I'm going to keep those, you know, just in case. Maybe I cut one of my blocks too small or I need to recut. Chances are I can go through here and cut it again. So I'm just going to put them out of the way, and we will get started on sewing. We are now on to the exciting sewing piece. We are so close, guys. We are now going to remove all of our material that we have cut up and sectioned off for each of our pieces. And we're going to go doing that by removing them number by number, numerical. So you want to make sure that we keep our fabric in order, and I'll show you how to do that. When we go through here, we're going to pull out the pin for number 1. If you do not have it glued in, it should be the first one that'll fall out, okay? That'll be our number 1 piece, and I'm going to lay it down flat and then go to number 2. Put number 2, number 3, followed by number 4, and of course, the biggest one, number 5 for this block. When you get your pattern, your pieces all laid down, you're going to go ahead and flip them back over, exposing block 1. But what happens if you get mixed up? I want to remind you about the gradient fabric color. If you're not sure if this is what color this is, maybe you're confused between 4 or 5, or you're just really unsure, go over here and find FI and match this up with your gradient color guide. This is going to help you pick out the best color, the correct color. So when you get your block complete, you'll be right. If this is not clear enough picture, remember we saved our pieces. This is why when we cut out our pieces, I said save them, put your label on them. We can go through here, find FI, and match it perfectly, okay? So that'll be a big help. So let's go through, pull all of our pins. You can then sew them individually, one at a time, or you can just put your pin on here. This is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to go through here and put my pin, another pin, straight through the middle and save them. Be sure if you have small ones, you're going to make sure you capture those in all the bulk in the middle. we're just going to set him aside, and I'm going to move on to our next one, okay? Number 1 is already glued together. So we're just removing number 2 and number 3. And honestly, there's not very many in here, so you could just pull them out and sew them. Again, I'm just pulling them out, getting them organized for us, just like this. And we're going to sew him shortly. Number 4 is going on top. I'm going to flip them back over to number 1 because we're always going to start with piece number 1, fabric number 1. Remember, this one had a little bitty piece in there, so we make sure we've got him. We sure do. Okay, so if you want to start separating your pieces, please feel free to do so. In my next section, we are going to start sewing together. Alright, for our next step, guys, we are going to organize our fabric. And as you recall, we cut all of our pieces. We put them in and secured them with a pin. Some of our one block may be glued, some of them may not be glued. This only has 3 pieces. This is a super easy block. If you don't want to take it apart and you feel like you want to leave the extra pin in there, you're fine to do so. Let's just skip it and move to maybe one that has a little bit more pieces, like this bad boy right here. So we're going to start with block number 1 or piece number 1, which is not glued down. Let me go ahead and remove him. Put his color piece number 1 down, followed by number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Now, this will be our 5th number. We're going to take it, flip it over, and pin all of our pieces back together, unless you want to sew this one. Now, I would suggest sometimes consistency is the key, and staying consistent is really helpful. So for this process, I would encourage you to pull all of your pins, put them in alphabetical order or numerical order, and then put them aside. We're just going to do that with all of them. Again, this one only has 3, but I'll go ahead and do that. 1, piece color 2, piece color 3. These are all so similar. So as a reminder, when we're uncertain and we're concerned we have the wrong piece, I want to remind you about our gradient color guide. This is very helpful. So you can go through here and meet up to see what color is what. If this doesn't work out for you, I know on camera it looks a little bit dark. Remember, we saved our extra pieces and we left the labels on them. So it's always a good idea. You can go back and check those as well. Make sure I get all those little baby pieces in there. Perfect. So I will go through and I will organize all of my pieces, and we will start sewing. Okay, now is the time we've all been waiting for. We are ready to sew. Remember, we had organized these for color piece number 1 is going to be on the very top. Remember, if you're uncertain, just refer back to your extra pieces with your labels or refer to your gradient color guide. I am actually going to be sewing with So Fine thread in a gray. As you can tell, it's kind of a smoke color. I don't typically trade out my thread for when I'm using dark or light. I just prefer the gray, and it seems to blend in really nicely. We're going to go ahead and set our machines to 1.8 stitch length to make sure we hold all of those seams together really nice and smooth. So this one's going to start out with number 1, and we are going to actually just glue him down. Remember, if you're uncertain about using the glue, as you can see, I use a lot. You can use other things, such as the tape wand. Any of those options help. Now, when you put your glue and you put your piece on here, let's make sure that we get the 1/4 inch seam on here, okay? Luckily, it's glue, so it pulls off real easy. But as you can tell, I have my 1/4 inch all the way through. What we do want to do is go ahead and fold that first seam over right on that line. We're going to take our 1/4 inch ruler. We're going to go ahead and make sure we don't have anything more than a 1/4 inch. Now, when we were cutting the fabric, we are cutting big. We are making excessive cuts here because we hadn't started sewing yet. When we are sewing within our seams, though, we want to limit that bulk and cut out as much fabric as we can. So we're going to go ahead and do number 2, the color piece. As you can tell, it kind of comes this way. When we line this up, we're going to make sure that this line, scoot it over for you, this line right here meets the end of that fabric, not any less. All right, don't go over it. You can be more, like the end of it goes here, but it starts here. Make sure this one reaches this other end of the fabric as well. And when you flip it, do you have your 1/4 inch seam? So you can take it over, fold it like that, making sure you have total coverage. One extra way you can do to audition that 1/4 inch seam is take a pin. I like to put it in just right at the seam allowance. You really only need it like on each of the ends. You can then take your material and fold it over to see if you are within that next seam allowance. So as you can tell here, I have more than a 1/4 inch and more than a 1/4 inch. This is why we cut our fabric extra wide, and we don't want to do exactly to a 1/4 inch, because finessing the seam allowances is really important. You don't want to have anything less. Okay, so this guy meets our standards. We are going to go ahead and sew him. Now, as you can tell, I'm not using pins, binding clips or anything, because it's such a small piece. That fabric is going to stay where it needs to stay when I move it right over here. If you are not comfortable with that, you can put your needles in or binding clips to hold. When I do bring it over here, though, I fold it up, fold my paper up, and just making sure that both of my fabrics are there and my seam allowance is there. When we sew our seam, I do want to point out, you might get wobbly in the middle, but we really want to do our best to make sure when these intersections meet, we are straight on that line, because another piece of material is going to match up. On this seam, another piece is going to come out over here, and that's where we get those crisp, exact points. So just sew straight down that line. Okay? We're going to go over here and open this one up and just press your iron on it. You can finger press starting out, kind of holds it down, because you don't want to pull your seams too tight. So you just want to natural press that out a little bit. I'm going to come over here and hit it just a second with my iron. Come back over And our next piece is going to be in numerical order. After 2 is 3, but we need to cut the seam allowance first. We've got, again, well over 1/4 of an inch material here. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And we will be ready for color number 3. So you can tell it kind of slants one way or the other. Probably why my material, the point is a little bit longer on this side versus this one. Now when I match these up again, we just want to make sure that this line is not past the fabric on the bottom, okay? Same over here, and I've got plenty of space. So if I needed to, I could scoot it further this way. When I fold it down, I can actually see that my 1/4 of an inch is going to be within this color, the bottom color, the color number 3. You probably can't see it as well on the computer, but in person I can actually see this seam, the color behind it, and if I put my finger down, I've got plenty of space, okay? And the point down here, plenty of space. So this one is also ready to sew. I work him over here, fold back over my line, and sew straight down the edge. Of course, it helps when you're threaded. Some way my thread has come loose. Let me see. Let me back him up a tad. Looking good here. Looking good here. I'm going to unfold. Do a little finger press here. See what we got. All right, fantastic. All the way around and on the edge as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit him with an iron. Flatten out that seam a little bit better. We're going to move to number 4. Go ahead and cut that fabric off there, giving our 1/4 of an inch again. As you can tell, sometimes your pieces tear because you've got seam allowance here. It's not going to hurt anything. I don't even worry about taping that back up. Okay. Let's start with number 4. Looks like he might go like this. See his point coming down here? He's going to be almost exactly to the end, and that's okay. Because we're going to have a little bit of excess to cut off with him as well. When I bring my paper over here, I do make sure my lines, my fabric on the bottom does not get crazy, try to run away, any of that. So I just want to pull him back over a tad. Make sure we're good. Open him up, press him out. Verify. He's going to meet from tip to tip and all the way to the end, so he is good. We really don't have to go through and cut all this excess off right now because we're not messing with those seams. We'll do that at a different step. So it might look a little sloppy. If it bothers you, you can cut it off. I do recommend leaving the extra. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room if you need for your seam allowance when we're building our pieces together. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my edge, which, you know, honestly, this works a little bit better than my 1/4 of an inch. And I like motions, don't get me wrong, but I don't move back and forth very well. I'm going to go ahead and cut that seam allowance off. The extra. We will check this one out. As you can tell, this side is a little bit fatter and this side's skinnier, so probably I cut it like this. And as I like to cut my pieces, you know, I always say I like to cut the long line straight. Long line is straight. I'm going to use that as my seam. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to match it, making sure, really important, this line meets the end or has extra at the very end of that line for the fabric on the bottom. Okay. I also am with an allowance here and here. So he is ready to be sewn together. Take this piece, go ahead and finger press it out. One thing I want to show you is, as you can see, these little bitty, I have it at 1.8. When you get really up and close, you can't really see your thread at all. If your seams are a little bit bigger, or your thread stitch length, these seams are going to be a lot more noticeable, and we don't want to see that. They are the hidden figures of the quilt holding it together, to be worked, not to be seen. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and iron him out. And we are done with this block. Hi, and welcome back. We are going to start with finishing my last piece, cutting the extra fabric off of it so we can start sewing. Now remember, I said you don't have to cut exactly, you could leave yourself extra, but since we are some newbies or learning this, we're going to cut along the line here, and this is going to make sure that you have your 1/4 of an inch seam perfect. If you don't want to trim all of this extra, you don't have to. Sometimes messing with too much fabric and too much excessive material, vice versa, it may cause a little confusion about if you've got your seams cut properly or sewn properly. Okay, so that is all we've done now. So this piece is ready. We have all of our pieces ready. We will no longer need this one ruler. We're going to refer to our instructions for our assembly. So we're going to do block A1, which will be at the top. So A1. Okay, I'm going to get that a little bit inside here. And I'll probably move it over to my sewing machine so you guys can kind of see how we're doing. Let's go ahead and find our first sewing, which is going to be the C and D, A1C and A1D. There's C and here's D. Set these others aside. What I like to do is find it over here on my example, see where we're laying at. C is right here with D is along the edge. So we're going to sew it just like this. And this is going to be our first instructions. Okay. When we put our block together, our pieces together to form our block, I say that a lot. You have these guidelines right here. These guidelines are going to actually meet and make this little dog ear on the side, as this one at the other side is actually going to just kind of run off. So one way you can check this to make sure you're within your seams, I like to stick a pin in this corner, see if it comes out on this side. As you can see, we are perfectly lined up. This is where my little binding clips sometimes come in handy. I put it there and hold my fabric, hold my paper, and then I go to the middle. Now you can see we have a bit of a seam. We probably want to make sure that it's lined up as well. I'm going to take another needle, poke it in the middle. See, that kind of went as an angle, so you're not going to get a really good reading on that one. Sometimes I like to lay this on my wool mat and press it through my wool mat. I feel like that one's a little bit crooked as well. It did come out perfect. Let's see how that's going to line up. This is where I use my binder clips. Gotta reach way over here and get them. I'm gonna put another binder clip in just right here to hold it down. It's gonna hold that pin straight because, as you know, as your pin moves, it moves your fabric. We don't want our fabric to move. Our fabric and our paper. That one's a little bit off. I'm going to try and realign him up here. Put it in. We're pretty good there. Okay. One of the other things I want to show you is these binding clips. If you're not sure on the edges, you could put your binding clip just perfectly on this line, flip it over, and it should be perfectly on that edge as well. And then you know you have a pretty straight edge. Sometimes I like to do this all the way down. Now you can put pins in it to hold your paper. I usually don't. I feel like when I'm working with smaller pieces, it actually moves my paper too much, moves my fabric too much. So I actually leave it just like this. Let me bring you over to the sewing machine. See if we can do this and make it look good. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so now we're going to sew our pieces together. I've taken out my binder clip, but I still have my needle in. I still have my other needles in the back. Might want to put a binder clip in here just to kind of hold the pieces. I'm verifying that I have it on the line, the front and the back. Therefore, my fabric and my paper will not move when I remove this needle. It can, you just have to kind of hold it steady. We're going to start out on that line, the white line, and sew all the way down. Being sure to check your stitch length to be 1.5 to 1.8. When I get close enough, I just kind of remove the binding clip and let it go on and stitch away. Now remember, we want to make real sure that we are straight and we hit those points on the line. This is where we get our fantastic lines and the perfect points. And as you can see, we can turn it over and we're just a little bit off, but I split the material a little bit, but that's okay, or the paper. When we open it, guess what? Pretty perfect point here. When I turn it over, here's another trick I like to look at. Does my lines here match, as in the seam line? If it's way off, you may want to redo it, but this one, perfect. We're going to take it over and we're going to just iron it just a tad. I usually like to iron my seams open. And this is also where we will use our acorn pin if you have a thick intersection of material. This one does have a little bit of a thicker intersection. Sometimes it helps me to flip it the other way and do it again. I'm going to put just a little bit of this acorn pin. It's easy press pin by Acorn, and put it right on that seam. Hold it flat for just a few minutes. We have our perfect piece. Still a little bit wet. I didn't put it on the back of it, but you can see the seam is actually pretty thick right there. All right, next we will move to the next section of our guide, which is going to be CD, which is what we just put together, to E. So let's find E. It's a little small piece. I'm going to turn our CD back over. Find E on our cut guide here, our symbol guide. Let's see, E is going to be at the bottom. As you can see, we have C, D, and E. So this is going to go on the very bottom here. I cannot move that out any. So we're going to sew it. If I just pick it up a little bit, we're going to sew it to that section. Okay. We're going to start over. Okay, so now we have this intersection complete. We're going to go ahead and find our next sewing section, which is going to be the CD that we just sewed to E. So we're going to find it over here, CD and E. That'll take this, and I've already found it. We're going to do the same process all over again. Just flip it over, match our ends. Now this one's going to go reaching out and making a dog ear, okay? As you can see, when we reach these lines all the way to the edge of the seam, when we flip it over, it's going to meet this one here, and it's going to make a great dog ear. Go ahead and put a pin through it, a tad bit off, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. Put that back in. Barely tap the end here. We've got this section down here, or we could check one of these two intersections. To me, if I want to be off on something, I really don't think I want it off on the end, maybe on the intersection, but you also have to look at the middle of the block here. You want to see what area are you in. Are you on the edge of your pattern? Are you in the big middle? What's going to be more noticeable? Perfect. Do you see how we stuck that needle through? And it is a perfect intersection there. Let's go on down to the next one. Put a pin in it. Another perfect intersection. And our last end. Now again, this is a lot easier. It comes out a lot better if you would maybe do it on your wool mat. Let's see how that looks underneath there. Came through perfect. So I would say this one, I'm going to go ahead and put some binder clips in it, holding those needles straight up and down at an angle, not slanted, because you know that, see how it pulls your paper behind there? Wrinkles it up. It's going to get it all out misshaped. So we don't want that. Go ahead, and it just kind of helps that pin stay together there. Now I'm going to hold this section down and bring it over to my sewing machine. Sometimes I just push it down there, get it up underneath my sewing needle, and I am ready. Go ahead, I did not pull him out yet. It's kind of making our pattern wonky. Get him out of there. This is why I usually don't put needles in my paper when I'm trying to sew it. When I lay them down, it kind of deforms my pattern a little bit. These are really small pieces, so it makes it really easy. Let's go ahead and turn that over and give a good look at it. We got a little high on this end right here, as you can tell, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and open it up. See where our seams are. They seem to be matching up those lines perfectly. Let's see about this end. Even though there's a little bit of a line, they seem to match up. We flip it over. Do our points line up? They sure do. Perfect. All the way around. Let's go ahead and iron him out. Again, you can iron him open or closed. I like to do open again. It's just to keep the bulk down. Makes it much nicer. I'm going to go ahead and mark this off that we have completed sewing number 2, and we're going to move to B, and we're going to add to CD. And as you can tell, we've already done CDE, so we're going to move that piece down here. Not always does that happen though. You got to really pay attention. We're going to pull B, and then we're going to put it to the piece we have already just sewn. The reason it's really important is these sometimes lay over, the seams lay over a certain direction. So if you don't put them in together, they're not going to cooperate and get the exact details we want with all of our seams. Okay, so B is way up here, and let's see where these are. C, D, we are looking good, and E. So B is going to fit in perfectly right here. I'll show you another trick you can do if you want to audition your seams. We're going to put a needle through it and make sure it matches. Sure enough, I'm going to go ahead and go down here, match a few other things up, see how it's looking. I like to get the really thin needles for this section. It's just easier, keeps my paper together. Wow, that one looks great. So what you can do, well, wait a second, let me get on here and marry this seam up so where the squares meet the fabric on both sides, front and back. Go ahead and put a needle in there. They look great. So as I was saying, you can audition to see how your seams are going to look and do they match by putting your needle in just slightly through the front and the back. Pull your needle out onto the seam. So when you open this, you'll see exactly where it meets. Now that's going to fold over and meet perfect. You could also look at your seams on the back and see, are they meeting really well? These seem to be matching up just really perfect. So we're going to go ahead and put him underneath the needle and sew him away, okay? Don't be concerned if you get a little bit wobbly, kind of get a little bit messy. Just try and stay as straight as you can. These patterns are very forgiving at times. So as you can see, we're doing pretty good there. Did I stay on the seam exactly? I did not. But I would rather not pull that seam out because it's going to match up beautifully. Okay. Go over here and press him out. Oops, I just dropped some patterns on the ground. We certainly don't want to do that. We'll get them all lost. Go ahead and press that seam open. I want to point out some of these seams are going to start running together here. So this is where you get your bulk of your the underneath. So this is why we use really thin seams. And if you want, you can go in here and pull out this paper. I always like to just wait, make sure it's looking right. Turn it over, see what we got. Beautiful. Perfect. Now we're going to go to the next step. Okay. Oops. And our next step is going to be adding F and G. So we're going to take and set this aside now. So we're going to get pattern F, piece F and G. Will be these two pieces right here. And where do they fall out together over here? There's G, there's F. So it looks like F is on top, G is on bottom. Our pieces are going to match up like this perfectly. Go ahead and put that dog ear kind of hanging over. You can see my pattern don't always match up right away. What I'm worried about is matching up this corner. If you get that corner matched up, you get those dog ears looking good. There we go. It really, you can just move your fabric around as you wish. Looks a little bit wonky here, but it actually came out pretty nice. Got the pieces on here. We're going to let him be. Now you can tell this piece right here, I don't know if it's how I have it in, but I'm in my edge and I'm within my edge here, but it looks like it's not necessarily matching up there. Now when I bend my needle, you can see it kind of makes it a little even worse, okay? So you want to make sure that your fabric and your pattern is just relaxed and not being pulled one direction or the other. Look at that, perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put a binder clip on him. Let's go to the middle and see what we have. Ooh, pretty great. Can you see it? I know it's kind of hard to see in there. We've got it right here at this point, this intersection. He came out at our intersection, exactly where we want him to be. This one is ready to sew. I'm just going to go ahead and put a little binder clip in here. Pull out my needle, but I firmly hold it together so there's no shifting. As you can see, I like to go ahead and pull my needle because it makes my paper shift for me. It may not for you, it may work perfect, and that's great. Once you learn the techniques, you'll learn what works best for you as well and how to better help yourself make it more of a natural, easy sewing. I can tell you I'm a little bit worried how this one stuck out up there, but oh look, we are out of thread. That what happened. good. Sure is. Okay, restarting. Okay, now that we have a perfect matchup, we're going to go ahead and put him under our needle. Go ahead and take those guys out. And then we have, oh look, I sewed the edge down. But did our match? Did we match? We did. We matched up all the way down. Let's see how our corners look, even though one is folded. Perfectly perfect. Could be over just a smear, but to me that's pretty perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and iron him out. How's it looking, guys? Look pretty good from your end? Perfect. We're going to move on to our next step, which is, did we just do F to G? We did. So we're going to do BE to FG. So BE is the block that we were working with prior to the F and G. Remember, this is our pattern side that we're going to be looking at. So when we have it on the wall, if you recall, remember we have the quilt side and the pattern side. And this is what they refer to as the pattern side. We're looking at the pattern side of our quilt at this point. All right, so B is going to go there. And as you can see, F is going to go right up next to it. Okay. Go ahead and put him together here. I always get you out of the light here. Sorry about that. Go ahead and put him in here perfectly. Put me a little binding clip there. This one's pretty long, so you want to make sure you're not like kind of overdoing it by pulling. We have a seam going together right here, so I want to see how that's looking. I do feel like one side of the pattern is down more than the other, but it's not showing that when I put my needle in. So let's go ahead and put one in here. Perfect, perfect. Go ahead and give him a sturdy wall to lean on there, that needle. See how these intersections look. Look how great it came out. I know it looks a little bit funny, but it's in a little bit crooked, but he came right up to that seam. That is exactly what we want. Same way with this guy. Perfect. What we can do is put another binding clip in. Right here. See how that holds in. Turn him over. Let's go ahead and sew him up. Remember, I sometimes take my pins out before I get too close because it moves my material, it moves everything around. See, can't lay flat, but these binding clips, they have a flat side, works out pretty good. We're going to get our fabric, open it up, and see how it's looking. Is our points coming out pretty perfect here, guys? Look at this. Exactly what we want. Let's look at our seams on each side. Let's go ahead and iron his seam out. He's looking great. Turn him over and kind of flatten out the front of him just a tad. We've got a few bulky seams. Let's go ahead and see what our next step's going to be. It's going to be B, E to F and G. Isn't that what we just did? Yes, sorry. This is why I like to mark it off. And then A to B and G. So we have our A here. And I can see at the top, A goes right along the top of our pattern here. So we're just going to lay him down. Get that out of the way. We're going to lay him down and line him up perfectly top to the bottom, just like we've done them all. Perfect. It's coming out all the way along. We're going to go ahead and put my needles secured with my little baby binding clips so I can make sure that seam is looking great, lining up perfectly. And again, remember, we can use these to check. How's that seam looking right here on the edge? Turn it over. A little bit low, so let's kind of bump him up a tad, okay? If you're uncertain, we'll put a pin in it. It looks good, but it looks like it's down just a tad. When that happens, I like to just go all the way down my material, all the way down the pattern, make sure this one's matching up. Go ahead and put a little needle in him. This one's matching up. And what about in between where I feel that it's messing up? How about right here? Looks good. So I think we're going to go ahead and sew him. Okay, we've got our seam. It looks like it kind of over snuck out a little bit up here. That always makes me worried, so I like to turn it over and see what we have. It actually does not hurt the pattern. We've got our blues matching up here perfectly, so we're going to iron him out. Okay, we've got one more piece, one more section here. Go ahead and get my pen I dropped on the ground. We're going to mark him off the A to the G. So now we do AG to H. This will be our last piece that we're adding on. So we can go over here and look at the H. He goes in the corner. Looks like it's going to fit our pattern perfect. I will let you continue to sew and check back here shortly for our completed patterns. We are almost complete with our blocks. Our very first 2 blocks for block 1, block of the month, and block 2 for block of the month. And I haven't really pressed him out much, but here is block 1 for Starry Nights. I know you can't really see a very good view of him. This is the back of him and how he's looking. Okay. I've worked ahead a little bit and we have completed block 2. So these will actually be on the wall like this. We've got block 1 and block 2. See you next month.